What's going on, everyone? So now that a disease has practically obliterated the film industry at this point in time when we're all locked inside our homes, there are no new movies for me to go and review, and it's a shame really, because I was actually going to go to the Phoenix Film Festival as well and talk about the movies I was going to watch there. But hey, I can accept it, for social distancing is a practice we all should honor to protect the most susceptible people from further danger. These movie cancellations have really caused me to reflect on how I use my time though. I had already made a New Year's resolution to watch fewer new movies that I expected to be time wasters, and just focus my time on the ones I truly wanted to see. But now that even more time has opened up on my schedule, and having had so much fun making my Cuphead video, I experienced an epiphany. I want to make even more epic gaming content, bro! So here you go. To kick off this season of videos I'll be making during the epidemic, I wanted to talk about another one of my favorite video games, Shovel Knight. Rather than making a traditional review, however, I thought it'd be more fun to do something different. Having recently beaten the final expansion King of Cards, my idea was to go into the various aspects of what makes each campaign unique, as well as better or worse than the others. I love all four of these standalone games, but some have stuck in my memory more profoundly for various reasons. This is what I would love to go into today, exactly how I would rank them from least to most favorite. So strike thy shovel, and let's get started. Number 4, Plague of Shadows. It's ironic that we should start things out with a guy that wears a plague mask, huh? As I said, I really enjoyed every single game that makes up the Shovel Knight treasure trove, so don't think that this game's placement in the rankings denotes it as a bad game. Plague of Shadows was a blast from start to finish, packing each level with fun combat scenarios and challenging platforming to overcome. This was the first one I played after the original Shovel Knight, so going from that simplistic gameplay to changing things up with projectile weapons was jarring, but ultimately rewarding. I guess where things don't stack as high for me is the fact that Plague of Shadows is mostly the same game as the original. It makes sense why, since its story runs parallel to that game, and served as more of an experiment rather than an ambitious follow-up. But for the most part, the level design is the same, with minor tweaks to accommodate for Plague Knight's jumping mechanics and floatiness. Playing this right after the original makes for a somewhat repetitive experience because of this, considering that you tread much of the same ground. Still, it finds enough ways to be different and wholly fun to play. For instance, you get to fight Shovel Knight himself in one of the levels, Plague Knight's explosive arsenal is surprisingly versatile and wickedly entertaining, and to top it all off, the story is unexpectedly charming. You'd think that an alchemist selfishly chasing after the essences of the kingdom's knights wouldn't stack up to a narrative you'd care about, but that's not the case. I found myself really invested as the game slowly gave me reasons to care about him, up until the final moments when I realized that the game centered itself around the theme of recognizing what's important in life. And without spoiling anything, the way this culminates in the ending was all kinds of adorable. If you've played this game to the very end, you know what I'm talking about. The mechanics involve quite the odd learning curve, but please, give this one a shot. Number 3, King of Cards. For the final game in Yacht Club's Shovel Knight project, they really outdid themselves with a beefy, irresistible, creative, and endlessly fun platformer that stands high among the most entertaining games of its kind. I didn't really know what to expect after learning that the main method of combat and environmental traversal involved shoulder bashing, but it ended up being tons of fun. King Knight is a nimble, fast, and powerful character, and I felt that through the absolutely precise controls and varied gameplay. On top of that, King of Cards does something that really makes it stand out favorably among the other campaigns: its structure. In the other 3 games, the 10 or so main levels are long stretches of platforming, capped off by a boss fight at the end. It's a formula that works, but this game flipped that on its head by offering many more levels of significantly shorter length. I actually preferred this since it made the game more digestible in really short play sessions, and there was a greater deal of satisfaction from being able to beat more levels with less frequent deaths. Generally, I had more fun since the shorter, more concise levels made for more consistent entertainment that never really got on my nerves. Add in some quirky characters, fun dialogue, memorable boss battles, awesome items, along with a solid progression system, and this was a great way for the Shovel Knight saga to end. But if the core game is so good, then why does it not top the list? One word: Joustus. Please understand that I really have no problem with this virtual card game at all. The concept was solid enough, and heck, if this was an actual physical card game, I would totally buy a pack and play with my friends. My personal problem is that its implementation into the rest of the game just really harmed the pacing for me. I've been a completionist with every single Shovel Knight campaign, so it became a little bit tedious to go through many different matches to get more money, upgrades, and merit medals. Not to mention that the difficulty in these matches was sometimes unbalanced, to the point where easier ones would easily get resolved with the use of a single cheat. If Joustus had not been an integral part of the game though, it easily would have been my number 1. The gameplay and level design are the most refined out of all the campaigns after all. Seeing how the story tied into the original game was also worth experiencing, which, speaking of... Number 2, Shovel of Hope. The original Shovel Knight game. There's a reason why the short, blue armored hero was the first non-Nintendo character to get an amiibo. This game has become such an iconic symbol for indie games because of how it does the cliched indie game thing of harkening back to the games of yesteryear, but for once, actually doing it well. In fact, Yacht Club did such a wonderful job with their first outing that even on its own terms, this is one of my favorite platformers. Even though I prefer the structure of shorter levels from King of Cards, each elongated stage of the original Shovel Knight feels like the intensively planned work of men and women who knew what their goals were. Not a single moment in the gameplay, whether or not that might be a platforming section or a boss fight, feels unfair. Some moments may be aggravatingly tough, yes, but never to the point of feeling like the developers were trying to punish their audience. I just can't help but have fun when playing this. Moreover, this was one of the first platforming games I had played that actually made me feel something. These kinds of games have never been known to have grandiose stories, and this one doesn't necessarily break much ground there either. But it does manage to find a way to infuse emotional storytelling into what you do in the game. I really became invested in Shovel Knight's quest to save Shield Knight, and once the humor-filled, dramatic, and even epic adventure comes to an end, the very final moments brought the story to a peaceful conclusion that I didn't see coming, but made the whole thing worth it. A phenomenon since its initial release in the summer of 2014, the original Shovel Knight is a modern classic and should be played by everyone who claims to like video games. But even so, a different game is claiming the top prize here. Yep, Spectre of Torment it is. The only thing better than the original Shovel Knight is making a game that's equal parts a Shovel Knight game and a gymnastics simulator. And Spectre of Torment is exactly that, so it earns the top spot. But beyond that, it's a game that dares to be much more melancholic and somber than the lighthearted fare of the other games. With that, the great thing about this collection of games is that each campaign has a distinct theme. Shovel of Hope is a traditional but an effective story about courageously overcoming the forces of evil. Plague of Shadows focuses on a selfish miscreant who ultimately discovers what's important in life. King of Cards basks in the hubris of its main character to the point of making him irredeemable. But Spectre of Torment packs the biggest punch of them all by being daring enough to take the tragic route. Characters are killed off, they're put through morally challenging situations, and it reckons with the idea that not all endings are happy. But in that, the story shows that noble choices can be made even among so much darkness, resulting in something profound despite its somber tone. Otherwise though, Spectre of Torment just nails that feeling of precision that you want out of a platformer. Spectre Knight has all of the speed and acrobatic capabilities you'd want in a playable character, boasting a moveset that is just plain fun to mess around with, regardless of how it's actually used in the levels themselves. Combat also feels satisfying due to his massive scythe that's complemented by very creative and useful items. And as I've said, I love every single one of these games, but Spectre of Torment is the only game to stand out because it offers things you didn't know you wanted until you try them out. Its surprises are the most rewarding to experience, on top of featuring everything that made the other games great. In short, it's the crown jewel of what I consider to be one of the best values that gaming has to offer.